You're live.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You're listening to and watching Newcastle Fast FM, The Late Show with your host Abu Tayb, and we have our co-host with us tonight, Jamaal Richard. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How you doing, bro?
Alhamdulillah, very well tonight, bro. Alhamdulillah, how you doing?
Alhamdulillah, very good, very good. We have our other co-host, of course, Salahuddin Patel. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, rahmatullahi barakatuh. Hope and pray everyone is well. Alhamdulillah, pleasure to be here again.
Alhamdulillah. And we have a really special guest for tonight's show. We have a good friend of mine, a dear brother to me, somebody who is a teacher, I would consider, somebody who I look up to, a mentor, our Sheikh Abu Usama. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Akhi Tayyib, Abu Tayb, and the rest of the panel of brothers.
How are you doing, brother? You okay?
Yeah, I'm real good. Alhamdulillah.
How's your Ramadan going so far?
It's going well. You know, we just have to just get used to the strange nature of what's going on. But alhamdulillah, it's okay. Ramadan is Ramadan.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So let's get straight into the show, inshallah. I have a number of things that we want to discuss today. Of course, the topic is called, principles of the sunnah during these testing times. So before we start, let me introduce you to the audience, those who are watching with us tonight, inshallah. And, you've been coming to Newcastle for a number of years now and supporting our work here at the Islamic Diversity Center, IDC Northeast, for many years. And most recently, you've come up to Newcastle to do, as part of Black History Month last year in October, to take part in our Malcolm X tour. So tell us a little bit about yourself. So those who don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about your background. What was it like being, growing up as an African American in America, and some of your background, basically? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, very briefly, I'm from East Coast in America. I embraced the deen in 1986 in the blessed month of Ramadan. And the fact that the Nation of Islam, who are not real Muslims, but they use Muslim terminology, and they saying things that resonated with me in terms of Islam being a religion that was a viable option, where I didn't have to believe in the theology of Christianity, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, and Jesus Christ is white, and all of the other racist images that were in the Bible and in Christianity were a big turnoff to me. So I was always looking for an alternative. So when I saw those brothers, or those people from the Nation of Islam and our community, I gravitated towards them. But it became quite apparent to me that it was a flim-flam, just like Christianity was a flim-flam. But their social message, it found a place in my heart. So I began to read about Malcolm X and other aspects of Islam. Then Allah blessed me to come to the deen in 1986, the blessed month of Ramadan. So just as when I perform Hajj, I always take time out to pay homage to people like Malcolm X, rahmatullah alayhi, by sending messages out to my people back in America, my family, my friends. I send videos from the Kaaba itself, letting them know I'm once again in Mecca and trying to connect it to my dawah to them. I also do the same thing in Ramadan. I always take time out to let people know that I don't practice and I don't celebrate birthdays, because the Prophet didn't leave that for us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But I do acknowledge, recognize, and embrace that my real birthday, the day that I was really born, was in the month of Ramadan in 1986. So Ramadan always has special meaning to me, in addition to the religious connotations. But it is the month that I became a Muslim, the month in which, Allah wiped away from me the kufr, the shirk that I was in. So that's a brief, background. Allah blessed me as well to go to Al-Medina. That was a tremendous ni'mah as well, big blessing because, being a non-Arab, an Ajami, I don't know Arabic, not really knowing about Islam, I was left to the vices of the different Muslim ethnic groups. So whether they were Asians, whether they were Arabs, whether they were from Africa, a lot of times the Islam that the Muslims were practicing back in America, where I come from, it was cultural Islam. Many of them at liquor stores, many of them were not, they were changing their names. And I'm not judging anyone, I'm just stating, the reality. But I was bouncing around amongst those communities trying to find a niche where I fit in, where I can relate as an African American to the people who are around me, because I knew one of the things that impressed me about Islam is that Islam addresses the issue of the structured and the structural racism, institutionalized racism that's in Christianity. So when I became a Muslim, I saw that same racism for many of the Muslims. They were racist, just like some of the white people, many of the white people that I dealt with in America. But I made a big dua to Allah Azza wa Jalla to just guide me to a path, a way where I could learn my religion. And I would be in a position to discern, differentiate between what was real Islam and what was the culture that was being called to. So I think the greatest ni'mah that Allah bestowed upon me after al-Islam is the ni'mah of being able to go to Medina, where I got an opportunity to learn the language and to come into the realization of the importance of true Islam is what the Prophet brought, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the way the companions understood his teachings from the Quran and the Sunnah. May Allah be pleased with them all.
I mean, Jazakallah khair. So when you were growing up in America as an African American, obviously you accepted Islam, you mentioned in 1986. Was that a common phenomenon for a lot of African Americans, or was that just something unique for you?
I would say it was common for a group of African Americans who had a similar experience to me, and that is, I went to an institution of higher learning. One institution of higher learning is I actually went to a university in America, an academic university, but I didn't excel because I didn't have the discipline to stay in the university, so they kicked me out. And then I got into some trouble. Then I went to the special university, the University of the Prison. And I went there. That's where I was exposed to Islam. A lot of times in prison, people are there and they gravitate to these different groups because you want protection. So if you're a white person, you may not necessarily be a racist, but you're going to go to the Aryan nation, those extreme white people, just for protection. You're a Hispanic, a Mexican, you're going to go with their gangs. If you're an African American, you'll go with some of their gangs, or you go to Islam with the Muslims. Because I had already started to read about Islam and learn about Islam, I naturally went with the Muslims. But even in the prison, those people really didn't know Islam, because when I accepted Islam in the month of Ramadan, I still remember it. And this is really important. I hope we can get to this, inshallah, at some point in the discussion. When I was locked up in the month of Ramadan, they would bring me my meals, and the meals were outside of the time of, suhoor, the breakfast that we take. And it was outside of the time of Maghrib, where we break our fast. So I would have to save the food to eat it at Maghrib time. But some of the people who were with me in the prison, they were telling me, you have to break your fast after Salat al-Isha. This is the lack of knowledge that they had. They told me, you have to break your fast after Salat al-Isha. So I was trying that, and wallahi, I almost left Islam because it was just too difficult. I never fasted in my life. I've been fasting from Fajr time all the way to Isha. It was the summertime, and the food was cold and it was hard because I saved it, and it was difficult. And I was that close to apostating because of the difficulty. And this is one of the aspects of the sunnah that I really try to call to, and I try to get people to understand its importance, because that's what the Prophet did. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam would send his companions out, and he would tell them, Bashiru wa la tunafiru, yassiru wa la ta'assiru. Give glad tidings and don't run the people away. Make things easy and don't make things difficult upon the people. So if those people had knowledge, they would have told me, you don't even have to fast because you're in prison. You don't even have to fast because of A, B, C, or D, whatever. If people had knowledge, they could have helped me out with that. But I was this close to apostating from this religion because it was just too difficult. And that's what Allah mentioned in the Quran to Prophet Muhammad himself. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. لو كنت فظا غليظ القلب لانفضوا من حولك. If you were rough and tough with them, Muhammad, if you were rough and tough, coarse, harsh with them, they would have left you and dispersed from amongst you. That's the natural response, knee-jerk reaction. If the husband is too tough with his wife, mother and father too tough with the children, if the one who's teaching is too tough in giving dawah, Prophet Muhammad, if he was rough and tough, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, and they're from the awliya of Allah. May Allah be pleased with them. The Quran said, Allah said, they would have left you because people naturally don't want people beating them over the head. So we have to take it easy. That's the sunnah.
And is that the advice that you give to new Muslims as well when they take their shahada, generally speaking? Obviously, you went through that particular experience. What is your advice to new Muslims who, it's their first Ramadan, for example? This might be their first Ramadan right now. What would your advice be to those people? Obviously, when we're involved in da'wah, we get people who accept Islam. So if they took their shahada a week ago, 2 weeks ago, a month ago, before Ramadan, what's your general advice to them?
Anybody who accepts the religion of Islam, I always advise them to connect themselves physically, if they can, to people who have been there and they've done that. And those people who are balanced, like yourself, Abu Tayb, Ahsanallah ilaykum. I'm sure you know from practical experience, and you can connect to what I'm saying. And when we meet these young brothers and these young sisters, I always tell them, listen, plug yourself into someone who knows the deen. They don't have to be a scholar, but they're tolerant and they're balanced. We don't want people who come into the religion and they start becoming extreme. Great scholar of Islam, and I don't want to make this real technical, but it's important. His name is Abu Bakr Ayyub al-Sakhtiyani, tremendous scholar, on par with Imam al-Bukhari and those people. He said, from the greatest ni'mah that Allah can bestow upon a young person or a non-Arab, a young person because he's easily influenced, and a non-Arab because he doesn't have the language. If he had the language, he can read the Quran for himself. He can go to the books for himself. He said from the greatest favors that Allah can bestow upon these two people is to guide them to an imam of the sunnah. Because the young person is going to be affected by the one who is teaching him. You see? So if your first teacher is a person to the sunnah, then he will plant in your heart the seed of the sunnah and the beauty of the sunnah and the divine protection that the sunnah brings. So what happens is, the person who's a brand spanking Muslim comes to the religion and he wants to pray. When he's praying, he doesn't know what he's saying. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just parroting and mimicking what the person is doing to his right and his left. He doesn't really feel the ruh, the spirit of the salah. He's just doing what the people are doing next to him. But as time goes on, he continues to read, he learns, he develops, and he gets better and better until he can ride that horse, so to speak, on his own. But because of lack of experience and knowledge, they come into this religion right away. I'm African American. The Asian community, they're going to give me the name, I'm Bilal. I don't want to be Bilal. I don't want to be Bilal. Why all the African Americans, we're 10, 15 of us, all of us Bilal. So when you ask one of the community members, have you seen Bilal? They say, which one? We got 18 of them, 19. So we don't know. We think we have to be Bilal. Another example is the sister comes into Islam. She's been in Islam for less than a month, 2 weeks. And the sisters who are around her say, you got to get married. You got to get married. You got to get married. She said, I don't want to get married. No, you must get married, half the religion. And then what happens? She says, okay, out of sincerity. She wants to follow and be a part of the community. So they bring to her someone who she knows that person is not compatible to her. Maybe the color, she's not into that color, she's not into that ethnic group. He doesn't tick the boxes for her. But her friends say, nah, you gotta love him fi sabilillah. Nah, not like that. So we gotta slow down. We have to take it easy. We always tell these new Muslims, just relax and don't be abrasive. Don't be too quick. And don't go into the house of your mom and your dad and break up the pictures and kill the dog or put the dog out. Don't do those things. Just relax and calm down and grow in your religion.
Well, let me bring Brother Jamaal into this conversation because we've got two other reverts to Islam here as well on the show.
Yeah.
Jamaal, what was your first Ramadan like? What kind of, can you relate to what Abu Usama's mentioning here in terms of the advice that you were given when you first started practicing the deen?
Yeah, I mean, there are many funny things that happened actually when I first embraced. And that was many years ago. And I was actually saying to my family the other day how interesting it is, because when I became Muslim, the time for iftar was about 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the afternoon. But for me, it was like, wow, man, this is so long. This is like crazy. Like, 4 o'clock, how am I going to fast until 4 o'clock? But, things have changed now, alhamdulillah. So, obviously we've gone with time and it's got a lot later, but we get stronger with that. But before I actually answer that, AT, I was going to ask Sheikh Abu Usama with regards to the fact that we mentioned about new Muslims. And it's funny because there's so many new Muslims that, they embrace the deen in Ramadan. And many Muslims, and it's very interesting because they are embracing at a time where, if you like, they're entering straight into hardship, something which is completely alien to them, that, they're going to be fasting, abstaining from food for so many hours. But the other thing that we find is that a lot of new Muslims, they are isolated sometimes because of the fact that their families are completely against them becoming Muslims. And they then have to look towards the Muslim community, which a lot of times we don't have time for them. And we know this phenomenon. It happens many times with new Muslims. But the thing I wanted to ask was, now at this time when we have to be isolated, what kind of advice would we give to new Muslims who now they have to stay at home with their families who may be antagonistic towards the deen of Islam?
Yeah, that's deep because, I really never thought about that dilemma that some of those brothers and sisters are dealing with. And that's because I have my own personal challenges that are going on. I'm looking at this Ramadan, like many of you brothers, we have a number of Ramadans under our belts. And we're trying to figure out, even before Ramadan was coming, how is it going to be? Just looking at it from my own personal lives. So I never took the time out to think about those many Muslim brothers and sisters who are brand spanking new, and they're in that environment with their parents and their relatives who may not be supporting them. So my advice to them is to do what Allah has taught and what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has practically shown us, and that is take it easy. Take it easy. One of the worst things that we can do is our youthful exuberance and the fact that we're so happy that we've been guided to Al-Islam, and this beauty of the religion makes us fired up and want to share this khayr, this goodness with everyone around us. And in so doing, we may come across as being a bit fanatical or intolerant or difficult to deal with. And then our parents, our relatives, they look at us and they say, what's wrong with these people? What's wrong with it? I remember when I became a Muslim as well, when Hajj came around 3 months after Ramadan, CNN had showed some pictures of the Iranians beating themselves, not Hajj, Muharram, the 10th of Muharram. They were beating themselves. I've been in Islam for 3 or 4 months. And my mother called me and she said, is this your religion? This is what you do? I said, nah, ma, those people are doing something else. So the point here is she looked at the behavior of the Muslims and became frightened. So my advice to those people is just to take it easy. If push comes to shove, you can hide and conceal your Islam. That's what happened with some of the companions. That's what happened with the story of the man with Musa in the Quran. They hid their Islam. The beginning of Islam, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Mecca used to go to a house called Dar al-Arqam, and they used to keep their Islam down and hidden and concealed. One of the strong companions is Kunya's Abu Dhar al-Ghaffari. Everybody heard of Abu Dhar? He was strong. I mean strong in his iman. He said, I'm not hiding anymore. He went to the Kaaba and they told him, don't do that. He went to the Kaaba and he said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammad abduhu rasuluh. And Quraysh beat him to a pulp. He ran down to the Kaaba, down in the Kaaba, and he stayed by Zamzam for like a month's time, and he only subsisted off of drinking Zamzam water. When he came back up and he saw the Prophet, he had gained a lot of weight. Prophet Muhammad said, Abu Dhar, what happened? Where you been? He told him the story. He said, I was down at Zamzam all this time. Prophet Muhammad said, Ma'u Zamzam lima shuri. The water of Zamzam is what you drink it for. It'll nourish you and so. So the point here is, if a person finds himself in a hostile environment, don't make it more hostile by not being wise. And if push comes to shove, conceal your Islam. Maybe it's not that bad. And you can show them that you're Muslims. Just make it your business to behave and to exist with them, learning and knowing about what the Prophet did and what he went through. And that's why the Sunnah is so important. And this is why the history of Islam is so important, because we can take from it examples of how to deal with people when we find ourselves in similar situations.
You know, AT was asking me about my experiences, and you know, Sheikh mentioned about racism and things like this, and you know, sometimes there's also like a lot of misunderstanding that can come from a lack of knowledge. And one example of that is when I first embraced the Deen, and I went to the masjid, and it was time to pray, and you know, obviously I was taught about putting your you know, ankle to ankle. So I'd be in this masjid, and I would have my brothers from different nationalities beside me. And when I go to touch them, their feet, they would be moving their feet away from me. So myself and my my friends who also embraced at the same time, we were wondering, like, what is this racism? Why are they, you know, moving their feet? And we kept putting our feet there again. And you know, obviously there was a misunderstanding that, you know, obviously they were from a different madhab altogether and they don't practice that, but it was just the way they moved their feet. It felt a little bit awkward. And, you know, that's another thing which happens where you get a lot of misunderstanding, and potentially you can have a lot of fitna and arguments from that. So that was something that was my experience at the time. And, you know, alhamdulillah, you know, we came to realize later on, you know, and obviously there was the other thing as well, where you'd give a salam to somebody and you do it with enthusiasm. You're a new Muslim and you give salams, and they look at you, and rather than responding, they just say, like, you know, you're Muslim. You know, they ask that question, and you know, you're thinking, well, yeah, I'm Muslim, but then you never actually got a return from the salam. So there's many examples, subhanallah. But you know, obviously we mentioned about following the sunnah in this time, so it's really good that you learn all the sunnah acts afterwards, and you can understand the differences from people. And you know, but in that time, you know, it always just comes very close to something big kicking off until you actually do get a bit educated.
If I could just chime in, because I think, you know, Jamaal, you made a really good point, because this is the experience of many African Americans, Afro-Caribbean brothers with the Asian community. And I'm not putting the Asian community down. Let's just be straight up and speak openly, because I would like brothers and sisters who are of the Asian community or other than that to be sensitive and aware of this. I also experienced this thing about, you know, putting your foot next to the foot of the two people who are praying next to you, and not knowing, I thought they didn't want to be next to me, but that was based upon other things that I saw. Where there was racism, real racism. So that is a case of a misunderstanding about the madhab. I don't have knowledge about the madhab. From that, I segue into another experience similar to it, and it's a misunderstanding. I was studying in Medina University. I'm sitting in the Prophet's Masjid, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right before the adhan goes off. It's a beautiful place because people bring out food to break your fast. It's just the aura, everything. It's a nice feeling. So the man who put the food out wanted to know about the brothers who were sitting there. So he said, okay, Everybody tell us where you from, what's your name. When it came my turn, I said Abu Usama al-Dhahabi, and I'm from America. They were shocked.
Mm.
The guy said, "You a Muslim?" I was like, "Man, I'm in the Prophet's Masjid in Medina in Ramadan, getting ready to break my fast." But what it was a misunderstanding. He was just shocked. The American was a Muslim. You American and Muslim.
Yeah.
Put those misunderstandings on the side. I want to say this, and I say it. I don't speak out of the side of my neck. I'm saying this not to put anybody down, but anybody who's listening. I've been in masjids that belong to different Asian groups, the famous groups in this country. Wallahi billahi tallahi. Some of those masjids do not make me feel welcome. They don't make me feel, us feel, as if we have a place in that masjid. It's a foreign place. You're out of place. They don't make you feel welcome. The fact that they're speaking another language, the fact that it's cultural, and they don't give you the salams and make you feel welcome. And I believe we have to go out of our way to make people feel welcome and not to isolate them or ostracize them or to marginalize them. And I got to say this, brother Abu Tayb, this is one of the things that I love about brothers like you, brothers who, and I don't say this to break your back, I say this to give you more encouragement, as the Prophet say, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, if someone praises you in your face, throw water, throw dirt in his face, because he broke your neck, broke your back. But he himself used to praise people. So we understand from that, you praise people if it's not going to be a fitting for them and you want them to continue. But anyway, I found that a lot of the Asian brothers, Arab brothers, who maybe they were not always practicing Islam. They had some jahiliyyah, or they grew up around Black people, other cultures and other communities. They're the ones when we come into Islam, it's like we don't miss a beat. Those are the ones we have insijab. There's harmony. But the people who are less enlightened due to whatever reason, those are the messages I tell you. Just like I almost apostated because people were giving me the wrong information, people will apostate when they get bad mu'amala, bad dealings from the Muslim community. So we all have to be careful of that.
Yeah, let me just jump in there a little bit as well. I think I have to make a few points on this particular issue, and it is something that needs to be addressed and is being addressed, I believe. I believe that there is work being done on the ground to deal with some of those issues. And I think you rightly mentioned, both of you rightly mentioned, actually, there's something to do with the culture or certain cultural aspects within the Asian community and the Arab community as well, with regards to this anti-blackness that we see sometimes, in particular anti-blackness, the racism that is there. And you can't hide, our community can't hide from that. Those who are more culturally inclined, you will see that even in the language, right? So if you look at the language that's used within the community, you can see some of the racism or hear some of the racism. And this is from the cultural aspect, not necessarily obviously from the religion, it's free from that, but from the culture itself, you will see words that are used like kala, for example, although it's an adjective, but the intention which it's used, you can tell it's not to describe somebody. It's used a bit more than that. And there is a superiority, inferiority complex issue that does take place. And you see that within some people's behaviors as well. And it's sad to hear that you see that in the masajid as well, because the masjid should be a place where everybody feels welcome. And it's one of the things that I'm really, really proud about our masjid, Newcastle Central Masjid at-Tawheed in Newcastle. It is one of the most diverse masjids that you'll find in the whole of the UK. So for example, we have from the committee all the way down to the congregation, it is very, very diverse. And I think the last figure that they were talking about was in last Ramadan, there was more than 33 different ethnicities and nationalities that were praying in our masjid. And there's a reason for that. People feel comfortable coming to our masjid because we removed that, any form of racism and any form of ethnic superiority, if I can put it that way. Yeah. But the point I was making was, even in the language, you'll find that certain words are used not only for a description, but also there is other intent behind that as well. And that's not just in the Asian community. So you got words like kala, you got shidi as well. Shidi is a very famous word that people use. And if people know where the history of this word is, and many times it's out of ignorance they use this, but the word Shidi comes from a tribe in the Indian subcontinent of people who originate from Africa, who came to the Indian subcontinent. And it's a particular tribe called the Shidi tribe. But when the Asian community used this word, it's to describe all black people, not just those from that particular tribe. And this is where the problem arises, that there's that generalization that everybody must be from that same group and so on and so forth. But this all stems from that ignorance that I was talking about earlier, that there is a level of racism and superiority complex based upon the ignorance, which is in total contradiction to the Deen of Islam, really.
I know we want to get my man Salahuddin in here. When I saw Patel, I said, was that brother, is that a Sikh Hindu name? I was thinking that. But you know, we have to be fair and just. This is not an issue that the Asian community have a monopoly on. You mentioned the Arab community. I even found that from Africans as well, some African communities. But remember, I was telling you guys that when I accepted Islam, there are a number of brothers in our community. All of them were named Bilal, 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 Bilal. We had a meeting to do the Eid. We're going to do the Eid. Who's going to do what? What's going to happen? So when they were having the meeting and the volunteers were there, one of the Arab brothers from Lebanon, he had said, when they started talking about the car park, who's going to organize the car park, tell people where to park their cars and so forth and so on. The Arab brother didn't mean it, but he said, let the Abid do it. Abd, the slave. He called the black brothers the Abid. And he didn't mean it like that. He didn't mean it. It was just on his tongue. He didn't mean it like that. But it was just that racist stuff that's on the oaths and on the tongues of the people. Yeah. And we took offense to that. And we held them to the coals on that issue.
Rightly so.
We held them to the coals. Let the Abid, we are Abid Allah. We're the Abid of Allah. But he didn't mean it like that. He meant, let them black guys do it.
But you know, there's something else that you mentioned there, because you said it even happens within the black community, even happens with the Asian community. This it's called colorism, essentially. That's what the technical term is for it. Colorism is basically the shade or the shade of color that you have within, the spectrum, and it comes from the colonial mindset, really, from the colonial masters. We've adopted those sort of some of those concepts, if you like. And one of them is that the lighter you are in skin color, the more beautiful you are, right? The darker, the more uglier you are. And this is something which is really problematic in the Asian community. And I'm going to bring Salahuddin into this as well, because he's one of our darker Asian brothers, right? And I was as well. So if you look at the lighter brothers, they're seen as more beautiful or handsome, and the lighter sisters are seen as more beautiful and more beautiful. Whereas the darker you are, you would be called, you'd have nicknames for people who were darker, like Kala Bandar, right? Which is black monkey, right? For the Asians, they'll talk about those who are darker. Even within Pakistani and Bangladeshi, right? You would see this, those who were Bangladeshi, they'll be racially abused by Pakistanis, for example, and things like that. So the darker you are, the more you were racially abused, right? Even within the same ethnicity. So I'm going to bring Salahuddin in on this and get some experiences from him growing up from being a Hindu to Muslim. Was there any difference in that for before Islam, as in the colorism issue, or was it just when you came into Islam? Did you notice that?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope you are well. Yeah, so for me, I am a revert from a Hindu background, you may know. So for me, when I transitioned to embracing Islam, for me, to be honest, I was almost anonymous, because people just thought me as like a Pakistani or an Indian that was already Muslim. So I didn't have that sort of issue myself. However, when it comes to this, racial sort of discrimination, I think it transcends, not just within the Muslim community, because it's in the Hindu community, within the Sikh community, and you'd hear it within dialogues within family members, community members. This idea of sort of discriminating against people from an African or black origin, and it's really, you know, disheartening, because as a revert to Islam, one of the basic tenets that you learn is that whole of humanity is Bani Adam, meaning that we are all one family, you know, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what color skin we are. We all understand we are the creation of Allah, and even biologically, we are the same family. We are all brothers and sisters in humanity, and that's how we should treat each other. And so, obviously, when you come into Islam, you have a very sort of puritanical belief that everything's supposed to be, you know, perfect. Now, you know, you're in the correct religion. You're believing and worshiping the one true God. You're trying to live a life that's pleasing to Allah, and everyone in humanity is one. But in reality, what you see in the communities is quite shocking when I saw that. You know, I think there's two main issues here. The first issue is obviously a sort of racial discrimination that is prevalent within the sort of Muslim communities. And I travel across the world and I see it all over the world. It's not just here in the West or in America, it's everywhere. And the second aspect to this is really the identity that Muslims give themselves culturally is by their sort of country of origin, you know, so they're very nationalistic. So they're sort of discriminate against people based upon their sort of background, but also from where they're from. And we know that this is completely against the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he taught us, you know, we are one community, we are one family, and he united all the tribes, you know, of the Quraysh together and to get rid of that jahiliyyah. So it's something that needs to be tackled, and I think it's through education. It's by having, you know, diversity within the communities and reminding. Sometimes you just have to give stark reminders, you know, to people from the Islamic faith to show them this is not from Islam. This is from the time of Jahiliyyah, and this is something that we need to remove from our community. So, alhamdulillah, you know, it's something that is very important that we need to sort of focus on. And alhamdulillah, you know, with a lot of the work that we do with new Muslim sort of education, we try and teach, you know, that this is something that is not part of the Islamic faith, and we try and make it all inclusive, like Abu Tayb does in Newcastle with the masajid, bring everyone together and make everyone feel welcome, you know, part of the community, make everyone feel special, that we are, you know, together in this. And this is the way, you know, we are the ummah of the Prophet Muhammad.
Brother AT, can I just say just for a minute, I'm sorry, brother, because wallahi, I'm enjoying myself here. I was tired today. After I broke fast, I was going to pray Isha. I was getting tired. I was telling my wife, hey, we better get this thing sorted out. So I'm feeling rejuvenated. I just want to say, this is all our speech and our experiences, but as Muslims, I think it's really important that we always bring things back to the square of best speech is the speech of Allah, and the best guidance, the guidance of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in addition to all of what has been mentioned, I just want to mention a few ayats for ourselves to contemplate and ponder on, and also those brothers and sisters who are listening. Perchance if we hear Allah has addressed this issue. This is one of the reasons why I was impressed with this thing, because Judaism, Christianity, Sikhism, Hinduism, all of those religions have structured racism in it. If you say that Jesus is the Son of God and he is white, you are in essence saying white people are better than everybody else. But anyway, Islam addressed this issue. We have racism amongst the Muslims, but it's not in our religion. So very quickly, Allah mentioned in the Quran, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا وَكُنْتُمْ عَلَى شَفَا حُفْرَةٍ مِنَ النَّارِ فَانْقَذَكُم مِّنْهَا. And hold on to the rope of Allah collectively, all together. And remember the favor of Allah upon you when you used to be enemies one to another. The Arabs, Quraysh, the tribes, they were fighting each other. The Ansar, the Aus and the Khazraj from the Ansar, everybody was fighting. That was their society. Allah said, remember the favor of Allah upon you when you were enemies one to another, and He brought your hearts together and made you brothers. And you were on the brink of the hellfire, about to fall in, and Allah saved you from it. That's one ayat. Another ayat. Allah told Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Surah Al-Anfal, لو أنفقت ما في الأرض جميعا ما ألفت بين قلوبهم ولكن الله ألف بينهم. Ya Muhammad, if you spent all of the money in the world, you gave Abu Tayb £1 million, you gave Jamaal £1 million, Salahuddin £1 million, Abu Usama £1 million, Fulan, Alan £1 million, to make and force them to be brothers. If you spend everything in the earth, Muhammad, you would have never made them brothers. But Allah made them brothers. He made them brothers through Tawheed. He made them brothers through following that one Imam, following the one Qibla, following the Quran. And the last ayat that I want to mention, and there are many other ayats and hadith, many, is what Allah described the Prophet's companion, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when He said, لَتَجِدَنَّ أَشَدَّ النَّاسِ عَدَاوَةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الْيَهُودُ وَالَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا. You will find those people with the most enmity, animosity, hatred towards the believers, the Jews, and those people who are mushrikun, the polytheists, the Yahud, and people of shirk, the polytheists. They hate Islam more than anyone else, Sikhs, Hindus, those kind of people. Very quickly, to wind it up, you find Abu Bakr was an Arab. He was the brother to Bilal. Bilal was from Ethiopia. The two of them were brothers to Salman al-Farisi, who was from Persia. The three of them were brothers to Suhaib al-Rumi, who was from Rome. And then some of the Jews who became Muslims, like Abdullah ibn Salam, like our mother, Sophia bint Huyay. May Allah have mercy, bless all of them, please with all of them. When they took this religion, Tawheed first, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and the blueprint, those companions effectively showed all of us how the brotherhood of Islam is. That's why we say, the Muslim community, listen, we have to follow that Quran and the Sunnah according to the way those companions followed it and understood it and practiced it.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. That's what I was going to say. I was going to actually mention just before you did that. You did my job for me, really. I was going to say, this is the experience of the Muslims. Now, for those who are listening, share with them what Islam actually teaches, because it contradicts what Islam teaches, the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah, and in accordance to the way of the companion. So you've summarized that really, really well. Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair for that. I think the last thing I want to talk to you about is with regards to, or the next thing I want to talk to you about is with regards to, you know, similar sort of top theme on challenges that the Muslim community faces. And obviously you're the Imam of the Central Masjid in Liverpool, Masjid al-Rahma. You know, that's a big masjid in a big city. You must have seen some serious challenges from within the community, Muslim community themselves, when you became Imam there. What did you see there, apart from the racism issue and stuff like that? But what else did you notice and see, especially from our youth? And how did you overcome them? Or what are you doing to put in place to deal with some of those challenges that the Muslim community is facing?
Well, I appreciate that you said aside from the racism issue, because you probably want to shed light on bigger issues, especially those that are relative to the youth. But I cannot dismiss the problem of racism in our community in Liverpool. I can't dismiss it because it's a problem. Racism is a problem. The Prophet described racism and he said to his companions when something happened between them, he told them about racism. He said, it stinks. He said, Da'uha finnaha natina. Abandon this thing and leave it because it stinks. He gave a similitude about the racism. He said, the one who was a racist is similar to the beetle dung, or the dung beetle. He's the little insect that's in the desert. Anytime animals drop their dung, cows, camels, donkeys, whatever, he gets a little piece and he starts rolling it wherever he's going. He takes it to his burrow. No one's proud about that. Prophet Muhammad said that's how the racist is. He's like that little insect. Now that's bad enough that he's given it similar to being like an insect or a dog or a donkey. That's why the Quran does that. The worst sound is the brain of the ass. The one who prays like this prays like a dog, and so forth. So on. He said you're like that beetle that just pushes the dung across the desert floor. So it's serious. But there are other challenges, like this mentality of being second-class citizens, this inferiority complex that we have, where we think being white is better than being anything else. And as a result of that, we want to, we look at ourselves as being lesser than. That's a problem. The Shabab in our community really heavy into antisocial behavior and into gangs. Liverpool, we have Liverpool 8, Liverpool 7, Liverpool 9. We have these different neighborhoods. And the Muslims are the same. You have Somalis in each neighborhood, Yemen, Libyans, Muslims in each neighborhood. And we're a reflection of each other. And each neighborhood is fighting and killing each other. So when I arrived there about 4 years ago, 4 Ramadans ago, this will be the 4th Ramadan that I'm there. Although I'm in Birmingham right now. Allah knows how many children were murdered. I mean, kids were being murdered by the Muslims because they belong to these gangs. So that was a really big problem. Last thing that I would mention, and it also is connected to this inferiority complex issue, is the Muslims were just satisfied before I got there with just expressing themselves religiously and Islamically inside of the 4 corners of the mosque. Just leave me alone. I'm in the UK. Let me come and pray, bump my head on the carpet, and that's it. No, we have a bigger responsibility than that. Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. This ummah is the best ummah brought forth for everybody. So we have to take our dawah outside of the mosque. When that thing happened in New Zealand, it's our responsibility to take the initiative and to go out to the outer community, to go to the schools, to go to the synagogue, to go to the church, go to the police, and to deal with the outer community to let these people know, hey, here I am. We are here. So I remember talking to you, Abu Tayb, about your personal story about how you grew up, what was happening with you in Newcastle. I remember you told me that you used to actually get into fisticuffs with some of the people when you were young, before you guys, second generation Muslims, grew. And you can do that. First generation Muslims, kids, first generation, they used to be chased by, running away. Those days are gone. We ain't running nowhere anymore. We're not running anywhere. Unfortunately, here in Birmingham, every Ramadan, people are stabbing. Muslims are stabbing other Muslims. It just happened today. It's on Sky News. So Muslims are not, our youth are not running from anybody. But what we need to teach them is the importance of the responsibility that we have as Muslims to help spread this religion, because Islam spread to the 4 corners of the earth as a result, more than anything else, of the good behavior that the Muslims had with the host countries that they visited, like when the Yemenis people visited Indonesia and those areas like that. So those are some of the challenges. And over all of that, the common denominator in all of that, I found in our community lack of knowledge. Lack of knowledge is a big problem. When we don't have knowledge, we have what's known as Hizbiyah. Hizbiyah is partisanship. We just down with our party. I'm Brawi, I'm Deobandi, I'm Hanafi, I'm this, I'm that. I don't want to, I'm Salafi, I'm Ikhwani, I'm Tablighi, and I don't want to deal with it. No, that's not our religion. That's not our religion. We all have a religious responsibility to be with the Hizb of Allah. The Hizb of Allah. That's everybody's responsibility. And in my community in Liverpool, we didn't have that. we had one particular group of Muslims who they are well known for keeping people ignorant so they can just take advantage of the confusion and just stay in charge of the organization. So those are some of the challenges that we have.
Well, there's two questions that come from that actually. Before I read this comment out, there's another question from there's a question from the some of the watchers, those who are watching the program. There are two questions to come from what you were just mentioning there. One would be, you know, what advice would you give to the du'at? Because you said we have to start going out, we have to start giving da'wah to non-Muslims and explain to them what Islam really is compared to what they hear and see on the TV or some bad examples from within the community, right? So what advice would you give to the du'at when they're going out there? Because you mentioned something about lack of knowledge is a serious thing in our community. But number one, what advice would you give to the du'at who are going out to call people to Islam, non-Muslims to Islam? And number two, what advice do you give to people who are just confused about all the different groups and sects and, you know, the different parties that are out there about Islam? What advice do you give them who, you know, the simple Muslim, right, who is seeing loads of different groups calling people to different things, everybody claiming to say, well, we follow the Quran and Sunnah, you should follow us. So them two questions, how would you advise the Muslims who are watching this program now?
Very quickly, as it relates to the first question, people were giving da'wah, what's the advice? One ayat of the Quran. ادعو إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. Call to the way of your Lord with wisdom. And wisdom is putting things in their proper place. Knowing when to be soft, knowing when to be tough, knowing when to talk, knowing when not to talk, knowing who should talk, knowing where it should be, knowing how you should appear. Give da'wah with hikmah and with a good preaching, and call them and argue with them in a way that is best. Don't push back evil with evil. Don't repay ignorance with ignorance. Allah mentioned in Surah Al-Furqan, وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنَ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. The ibad, the worshippers, servants of Allah, they walk in the earth with humility. The da'i has to be humble because the Muslim is humble. How's the da'i going to be arrogant, thinks he has some superiority over the people? Be a person who's down in the earth with the people. Someone will come from the desert and he wants to look for the Prophet. He'll come into the masjid, he'll look around, he can't find him. He'll say, I'm looking for Muhammad. Where is Muhammad? The companion say, you see that man laying over there in the corner on the ground? There he is. So he didn't stand out. He wasn't arrogant. So that's the ayah. Call to Allah with hikmah, preach in a good way, and argue in a way that is best. That's my advice to people giving da'wah. Be tolerant, be easy, have rahman, so forth and so on. As it relates to the new Muslim, and I was that new Muslim. I was in Medina University, brother. I was a new student in the university. And they were giving us in the fiqh, the Maliki say this, Hanbali say that. I was like, I wasn't feeling it. I was like, what is all of this? I just want to know what I'm supposed to do. And I was new. As time went on, I understood better why there was ikhtilaf. But my point was, that was me. I was like, what? Why all these opinions? So my advice is very simple, very simple. The measurement for knowing who's on the haqq and who's not on the haqq is by simply always asking yourself, when people tell you, do this thing, believe in that thing, do this form of worship, you always have to ask yourself, okay, I'll do it. But my question to you is, what ayat and what hadith are you using to prove that I should do that? Secondly, did Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, did they understand that ayat or that hadith in that way? So I'm a brand spanking new Muslim. People come and tell me, let's do the Mawlid. I don't know anything about the Mawlid. I say, okay, let's do the Mawlid. But before I do the Mawlid, I'm not against it. But before I do the Mawlid, I was advised as a new Muslim, what ayat, what hadith are you using that would allow us to do the Mawlid? And then the person says, well, Allah said in the Quran, Allah bi dhikrillahi tatma'inna al-qulub. When you make the dhikr of Allah, your hearts become tranquil. So we're going to sit and make the dhikr of Allah. It's okay, beautiful ayah. That's in the Quran. Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, did they understand that ayah that way? If they understood it that way, then let's do it. They didn't understand it that way, then we're not going to do it. And Allah knows best.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. There's a question here from Brother Feroz. And just to let you know, Brother Feroz is one of our da'is in New Zealand. And alhamdulillah, you mentioned the incident that happened in New Zealand, and they recently did a tour across New Zealand over 2 weeks. And exactly what you were talking about, to go out there, engage members of the public, to share Islam with compassion, with reason. So the question he has is, because he came across different communities, is what can you do when you face some Muslims who may have similar goals, but because of their attitude, you just can't work with them? And obviously you have a lot of experience, Sheikh. What can you share to answer this question, please?
I mean, a lot could be said about this question, just like the previous two questions, but very quickly in a nutshell. Again, the importance of knowing the seerah, knowing the life of the Prophet. First of all, the Prophet described the believer, and he says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, al-mu'min ya'laf wa yu'laf wa la khayra fi man la ya'laf wa la yu'laf. The believer is a person who is a sociable person. He initiates connecting to people, and he reciprocates when they want to connect to him. He said there is no good in the one who doesn't initiate and makes attempts to connect to people, nor does he reciprocate when they try to connect to him. So the Muslim is a sociable creature. And this is why doing the Ramadan with this coronavirus the way it is, it really impacts us. It's not the same Ramadan that we know, the Ramadan of Taraweeh collectively, the iftar, breaking fast collectively. This is the thing that we're finding kind of weird and strange. I say that to say, the Nabi was at his house, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sahih Bukhari and Muslim. A man came and knocked on the door. They said, Ya Rasulullah, so-and-so's at the door. He said, what a terrible man he is. This guy is a problem. Let him in. They opened up the door, the man came in. Rasulullah, oh, how you doing? What's going on? How's your family? It was nice, this, that, and the man left. Our mother Aisha witnessed what happened. Ya Rasulullah, you said this when he was at the door, and then you treated him that way when he came through. Prophet Muhammad told us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and by default told us, verily the worst people are those people who, the person who, people avoid them because of their evil. So there are some people who are very difficult to get along with. And I found in giving dawah, some of the most difficult people to get along with are people who are involved in dawah. So when we find people that we can work with them, we hold on to those people with our molars. We hold on to them. We find people who are always creating conflicts. They're difficult to understand, difficult to work with. We just minimize the amount of work that we do with them. We don't totally, eliminate working with them if we can help it. But if we can help it, we say to them, "Lakum dinakum waliya din." Not your kafir, but to you is your way into my way. I'm not wasting time with you anymore. So we just have to, take it easy. And all of you are brothers who are involved in dawah. I'm sure you have experiences where Abu Tayb wants to call me to ask me to come to Newcastle to do this and do that. I can make it difficult or I can make it easy. I've been on that side of the equation where we invited people to come and the person wants to fly first class and he wants us to get him a hotel in London across from Speaker's Corner. You know that big hotel? What's that hotel called that the Burmese guy owned? What is it called? Dorchester.
Dorchester.
Yeah, he wanted us to put him in a Dorchester. We told him, Chef, we're in Brixton. You know Brixton? South London. How are we going to put you in a Dorchester? And he was insistent. He came to the UK on his own and told us we have to pay for it. This is difficult. People like that, I can't deal with. We can't deal with that kind of, because it's dysfunctional. So we work with people, inshallah, as the Prophet says, Saddidu wa qaribu. Take aim and try to get as close to the bullseye. Do the best that you can. Some people we can really get down with them and others from afar we cooperate with.
Mashallah. Before we go any further, I just want to let you know as well, everyone, that mashallah, we've got people giving salams from around the globe, alhamdulillah. So obviously we have Faraz, who gave that question, from New Zealand. We have Juana Waleska Cruz, I hope I said that correctly. He says assalamu alaikum from Honduras.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, amigo.
And we also have
Honduras. Sorry, Honduras is where the Sandinistas were.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Maybe
Central America.
Yes,
to Mexico.
Yeah.
Honduras is not in America.
South America.
Yeah, North America, Central America.
Yeah, but I think it's where the Sandinistas were. Yeah, it's a different story. Different story.
Okay.
America was pumping drugs, crack cocaine in the African American community, supporting those people. And then they're gonna come to the world and tell the world about democracy and all of that.
Well, hitting hard tonight, mashallah. Hitting hard tonight. Also, we have Mahbub Hussein says, Assalamu alaikum, gents. Wa alaikum salam rahmatullah.
From York, yeah?
Is
that the Mahbub from York?
From York, I believe so, yes.
Mashallah, wa alaikum salam.
Inshallah.
Okay, yeah. I've got one more last thing to mention before we go over to you, Jamaal, to talk about our health and fitness tips for the night, right? Sheikh Abu Usama, one last thing, if you could share with everybody who's watching us now, what principles should we adopt or know in these testing times when we're faced with, COVID-19, coronavirus, how in terms of practicing our deen, because a lot of people are going to wake up, a lot of people are going to, number one, come to the religion, hopefully, inshallah, by Allah's permission, and many people who weren't practicing are going to start thinking about practicing the deen as well. So what principles would you give or advice would you give to those during these testing times?
Akhiya AT, did you break your hand? Did I see a cast on your hand?
No, my hands are good, alhamdulillah.
Oh, I see.
Fighting again.
So with Jamaal, when we first got on, I looked at Jamaal because he was sitting sideways, and I said, "Mashallah, Jamaal is built like Mount Uhud." Mashallah. And now you're mentioning he's going to talk about
health and
fitness. I could dig it.
Sheikh, not speaking as a specialist, but speaking as someone, as with Salahuddin, who's on a journey. So it's an interesting angle we're coming from. I'm not someone who's a personal trainer or anything like that, but I want to take people on the same journey as myself and Salahuddin and AT. We're just, that's what it is. So inshallah, we're trying to give encouragement, because sometimes people feel intimidated when you have someone who's built like, really hench, and he's like, completely ripped and shredded, and he says, "You can be like me." And we say, "Yeah, right," But here, we're just doing what we can, slowly, inshallah. So it's an interesting journey, alhamdulillah.
Now keep up the good work, man. I admire that. I used to be very athletic. I'm not as athletic as I want to be, but inshallah, without any more procrastinating, after this Ramadan, doing this Ramadan, to get my diet together and start getting out there and working out. The strong believer is better and more beloved to Allah than the weak believer. And both of them, there's good. That's what the hadith said. As it relates to the sunnah, akhi, and this principle of the sunnah and the corona, a lot can be said, but I just want to focus on one thing very quickly, and that is the sunnah came to make things easy for the people. Allah sent Prophet Muhammad as a rahmah to the whole world. So, ma arsalnaka illa rahmatan lil alamin. We sent you as a rahmah. Make things easy. Those verses in Surah Al-Baqarah that talk about fasting, kutiba alaykumus siyam, siyam is written for you, as it was on the people before. In those verses of fasting, Allah mentioned, yuridu Allahu bikum al-yusr, wa la yuridu bikum al-usr. Allah wants ease for you, and He doesn't want difficulty. And therefore, if you're traveling, if you're sick, you make your days up that you miss later, because Allah wants the things to be easy for you. In Surah Hajj is a type of jihad, especially for the woman. And those verses about Hajj, one ayah is about fasting, a pillar of Islam. This other ayah is about Hajj. Allah said, ما يريد الله ما جعل الله عليكم في الدين وما جعل عليكم في دينكم حرج. ما جعل عليكم في الدين ما جعل الله عليكم من حرج. ما جعل الله عليكم في الدين من حرج. Allah has not made your religion difficult for you. So the point I want to make here, brothers and sisters, is don't feel that we have to go to the mosque and we have to pray in Jamaat. Ramadan is not going to be the real Ramadan if we're not making Taraweeh and we're not breaking our fast collectively. We didn't do their Eid, and yes, things are different. But the beautiful thing about Islam is whatever you happen to be, you're a Muslim astronaut for our youngsters, you fly in a spaceship to the stratosphere. If you're a Muslim who goes on a submarine and you down in the ocean, you're in the desert, you're in the jungle, you're in the city, you can practice Islam wherever you are. You work on Wall Street, you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you flip burgers at Burger King, whatever your vocation is, whatever you're doing, wherever you find yourself, Islam, the sunnah, shows you how to do things. Allah told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. You have in the Messenger of Allah a perfect example. That's for the woman, he's a perfect example. For the old lady, perfect example. The ladies that's married, perfect example. White, black, rich, poor. So during this corona, I think we just have to relax and take it easy. And don't feel any kind of way when you find we're not doing things as we have been used to doing. Yes, we wish we can do a whole juz of the Quran every night. We do wish that, but that's not the script that we're going by right now. The coronavirus is on the scene. So let us take the Nabi of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his teachings, the principles that he left us, and let us again hold on to them with our molar, with our molar.
Jazakallah khair. That's really, really good advice. I really appreciate that, inshallah. Just we're gonna wrap this show up with our Muslim version of C.T. Fletcher.
Yeah.
Some
You know,
health advice, inshallah, and fitness advice, like we do every night. Yeah.
If I stood up, then you'd take that back straight away. Subhanallah. I'm going to keep it very short today. Like I said, it's all about being on a journey and keeping fit. And the first thing I wanted to talk about really was about nutrition and the fact that yes, there are really over the top healthy types of foods that you can eat, but for me, it's not really about going over the top and eating really, really healthy stuff, but it's about whatever you eat. Can you regard anything that you're eating as medicine? So, for example, we have discussions a few days in a row from Zahir about palmos. Sheikh Usama, I don't know if you know what a palmo is, but if you've been to Newcastle a few times, you probably do know what they are. But could you regard that as being medicine? And the answer is probably going to be no. Although yes, you fasted all day and you can afford a few extra calories. But what about the food and what it's doing to you? So, for example, some of the food that I had today, what we call Jamaican hard food. So, you had your starches, you had, the green banana, which has iron, and I had my cabbage, and obviously I had my meat, which was roasted. I had an amazing meal today. And as I was eating it, I felt really, really good because it was like, this is like real food, Yeah, obviously there's other days when you eat something which, it's really bad for you. But the worst thing is that whatever it is you're eating, if you've spent that whole day, you've eaten your food and you've gone to bed at the end of the evening and you haven't done anything physically, then it's about really feeling bad about yourself. And I think it's important to feel bad about yourself, not in the way that you put yourself down, that you are, that you become nothing to yourself, but the fact that you are able to do something, you're able to do anything. So whatever it is, it should, even if it's token, you should do something. So today, for example, I didn't have a really, really brilliant workout, but what I did is the last hour before iftar, just before reading, what I did was I did some burpees. We spoke about burpees. Burpees are really good. It's like, for example, if you're in your home and you can't go out and do runs or whatever, then, you know, we can do things, calisthenic body weight exercises. I did burpees. I did some squats. I did some press ups. I have my bands here. You know, I've always got these with me. These bands are really good. You can do whatever, you know, you can do some, these here for your chest, and even just having it on you and just doing something. And at least by the end of the evening, you feel that you've done something, and then you can build it up until you start to see the physical changes. And when you see physical changes, that is an encouragement. But sort of the main message is eat good. And when you're eating, maybe look at your meal and say what can be regarded as medicine and what can be regarded as like just an indulgence. So I can see some of the comments here, private chat here, comments talking about jerk chicken. Nice. But then AT wants some palmo. You think you can hide with that comment, bro? You want palmo? That's not medicine, bro.
Bro, that's protein, brother. You can't hide away from the protein, my friend.
But that's all it is. Make sure there's some medicine in the food that you're eating, and make sure you do something, some type of exercise where you know that you've actually, you could tick the boxes. And that's my message today, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Saladin, you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, Jazakallah khairan, Jamaal. Really good tip. Inshallah, hopefully that's helpful for everyone. I just want to add to that as well. You know, when you're fasting, the whole principle of fasting is obviously taqwa, to sort of get God consciousness, and it was something that's prescribed to the nations before, as Allah mentions in the Quran. But one of the important principles of fasting is that, you know, you're supposed to be in a state of sort of neediness, you know, that when you're trying to strive for the sake of Allah. So when it comes to eating, absolutely what Jamaal has mentioned, try and eat stuff that's not just going to be, like Jamaal said, that's going to satisfy you, but also it's going to be some sort of medicine, but also it's going to be spiritually uplifting. Because what you don't want, and you see this a lot of the time, is that people, they actually have a feast during their iftar, right? And this goes totally against the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, right? The feasting is for Eid, not during every night of iftar. And you know, you hear people, they sort of gain weight during Ramadan. The point here is we need to go back, like the Sheikh mentioned, to the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, where, you know, the way they used to eat very little, you know, in terms of to give them energy. And you're seeing a lot of medical research now. You know, we don't follow medical research, we follow what the Prophet ﷺ says, but obviously this is what's corroborating what was being taught to us, is that when you have reduced calories and you eat healthier, you're going to have a lot more energy, you're going to feel a lot better, your mind's going to be a lot clearer. So the prophetic tradition is eat enough to keep your back straight, and then if you can't, then eat a third, right? So no one should be stuffing their bellies during iftar, inshallah. So that's my advice. I know, you know, it's a cultural practice. It's something that takes time. So maybe something simple like, you know, get a smaller bowl, a small plate, and inshallah, you'll see the benefits of that, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah, subhanallah. You know, I'll be honest with you, I don't enjoy too much. I love the company. I love the social gathering aspect of going to invitations to iftar, but having all the food forced down me, that's something I've never really enjoyed. You know, I went to a beautiful brother's house for an invite. This when I was early days of Islam for me. And what happened is we broke out, Adhan went off. We started to, you know, break our fast. They came out with samosas and spring rolls and so many different things. And it was a massive platter. And it's like, wow, it was incredible. And I was starving. We hadn't even prayed yet. And I was enjoying it. And then just as I was about to take my last morsel full of when I was really so full, they started to actually bring the dinner out, subhanAllah. So that's why I don't enjoy going to iftar, because that's like, what are we going to do now? And they say, no, brother, you have to eat. And then now it's like, it's incumbent on you. You have to eat, subhanAllah. So, wow, lockdown can have some benefits as well, subhanAllah.
But that was part of the Asian community. That was part of the Asian culture that's positive.
Yeah.
Meaning the generosity.
Of course.
Like prior to becoming a Muslim in America, I did not see that display of karam, generosity, that I saw amongst the Muslims. And it was consistent with all Muslims. Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, India, the Arabs, especially Africans, because our religion, whoever believes in Allah last day, let him honor his guests. So although it's a lot, but we don't have to eat it all. I just want to be fair and balanced. I didn't want anybody to hear what we were saying today and take it the wrong way.
Of course, yes.
They think that we're bashing. No, we're not bashing. Because we're going to say the Asian community has that thing about generosity as well in their culture. Akhi Salahuddin, do Sikhs and Indians, Sikhs and Hindus, do they have that as well? Like the Muslims have?
Yes, I think it is definitely Indian subcontinent sort of culture, but I think it also stems back to the time when the Muslims were actually prevalent and ruling in India, that it transcended all of the cultures. So you do see that the Indians, again, they're very sort of generous, and the Sikhs, and if you look, the food is exactly the same, to be honest. So obviously when they have guests, it's the same sort of spread. You have the starters, you have the main course, and then you have the dessert. So yeah, absolutely. But obviously with Islam, it comes with that extra benefit of, being amongst believers and doing it for the sake of Allah. So there's that greater level of sort of generosity as well, inshallah.
Jazakumullah khair, everyone. We're going to wrap it up there, inshallah. Good advice there. Really appreciate you guys sharing your knowledge and your information, your benefit. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Abu Usama, for taking the time out and being with us tonight. We're going to wrap up the program there, inshallah. So we'll be back tomorrow evening with Dr. Steph Keris, who will be talking about Islamic history in Europe, inshallah. So we'll be looking at things like, when did the Muslims come to Europe? Do Muslims have a place in Europe? And so on and so forth. So we're going to have an interesting discussion tomorrow with Dr. Steph Keris, who is a specialist in Islamic history in Europe. So make sure that everybody tunes in for that as well, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله
وعليكم السلام
وبركاته.
ورحمة الله وبركاته.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Take care, guys.